Morning. It is actually Wednesday at 1 minute to midday, so I can still get away with saying morning. And you might be wondering why I'm starting a weekly vlog on a Wednesday, and it's because I filmed some stuff on Monday, but it was basically just an introduction to the week, and then I didn't have time to film anything else. And then I filmed some stuff on Tuesday, which was kind of like a reintroduction to the week because I didn't have time to film much else on Monday. And then I filmed nothing else. And so when I try and piece together in my head what this video is going to look like, to me, personally, there's very little value in me telling you 3 times what this week entails, because that's what this is going to be, right? If you watched last week's episode, you will remember that so much of what I was working on, particularly last Sunday, was just doing a giant reset of things. I was away for weeks, and then there was a fire in the office over the road, which means we had no internet, and then we moved office and lots of stuff happened, which means that I felt last week as if there were lots of plates spinning, but I couldn't quite keep my eye on all of them because the foundations of my life were just a bit messy. So last week I took care of putting all of those foundations back in place. And so far this week, Monday and Tuesday, that has absolutely paid dividends. I have had a really productive 2 days, been to the gym twice, I've done the steps I want to do twice, I have done some of the kind of life admin stuff I need to do, I've had good sleep, like all of the fundamentals are in place. And that's good news this week, because from today onwards, this week suddenly gets very busy. So today I am in the office. I've actually just got to the office. I worked from the apartment this morning on a piece of work that I needed to get done early on in the day, just driven to the office, and today is like probably a 12-hour work day, which sounds extreme to some people, I'm sure, but I don't do these very often. But looking at the list of stuff that I need to get done before I travel tomorrow, today is going to be a long day. So very, very long day today, and then maybe do a 5K. I'm desperate to get back into running, and there has just never been a good time. So I've decided a good time doesn't exist. I'm just going to begin anyway. The temperature outside right now is 32 degrees, so how a 5K run will go, I don't know. But then tomorrow I am speaking in High Wycombe and then meeting some people in St Albans in the afternoon. So leaving Cardiff in the morning, driving to High Wycombe, arriving at this event, speaking, shaking hands with people, leaving immediately, driving to St Albans, meeting, dinner, drive to London, stay in London overnight, Thursday night, Friday morning, recording with Simon Woodroffe, the founder of Sushi, for a podcast that you'll be able to hear probably around the same time as when this video comes out. So I'll let you know in the description if it's live already. Really looking forward to that conversation. Simon is a really interesting man with an incredible decades-long business career and success stories that are so big that you probably see them on your high street, right? We've all been to a Sushi. So speaking to him about his business career and pulling out some of the lessons that I can from his story. Then whilst at the Acast studios in London, recording a solo episode or two to get the ball rolling again in the second half of the year with the podcast, because that has been so neglected for so long now that I am desperate to bring that back. So we're bringing back running, we're bringing back the podcast. And then this weekend, I think I'm out Saturday, and then Sunday will probably be another big life admin day. So probably more like tangible stuff to show you this week than in recent weeks, because if you watched last week, you'll know that it was lots of strategy meetings. Obviously, I can't bring you along to them. Obviously, I can't tell you the future plans for the businesses because that's just commercially sensitive, right? The week before that was like the fire and everything went mad. So this week, hopefully, although it is Wednesday, from today onwards, for the rest of this week, for the rest of this video, I'll try and show you tangibly a little bit more about what I do, where I go, who I speak to, and bring you along, because it's going to be a busy one. It's going to be a strange week in the sense that I am all over the place, but still can't drop the balls that need to be held, spinning plates, dropping balls. I'm getting my metaphors mixed up here. But my plan is to go into the office, have a quick conversation with a client that I need to have 4 minutes ago at midday, and then do some work. I will catch up with you later on and maybe take you along for my 5K run. If I do it, when I do it, when I do my 5K run, I'll take you along. See you soon. You ready to see me do some manual work for the first time ever? Because you've never seen this before. So let me set you up here, and I'm going to do something and explain what I'm doing and why. So right now I'm in the Sewdirect office, and this is a folding table. You are sat on top of a giant printer. This will very soon be a much larger scale pick and pack operation once we have more paper stock, which will be soon. But in the meantime, what we do is for customers, we print out these big things here. This is a PDF sewing pattern printed onto A0 paper. Now, do I normally do this? No. Am I normally in this office as opposed to over the road in the Patter office? No. But the time is 1 minute to 7 in the evening. I'm just about to work on tomorrow's talk, and a customer of ours needs a reprint of a pattern that they received earlier in the week urgently. So I'm going to print it. Well, I have printed it. Here it is. Fold it, make it ready to post for tomorrow, and then somebody will post it first thing in the morning. And there is a knack to folding these sheets, right? So A0 is very big. Don't know how big, but very big. But if you fold it in half like this, and then fold it again in the same direction like this, and then turn it, fold it in half again like this, and then fold it one more time like this, that is an A4 sheet of paper, which means that that posts with Royal Mail as a large letter. So the reason I tell you that is because sewing patterns are a really good e-commerce product, because they are either PDF, which means they deliver instantly to customers to their inboxes with no delivery cost to us as the merchant, or they're print on demand, which means they fold up and post as a reasonably light large letter, and we have a rate with Royal Mail to make sure that we can post lots and lots of reasonably light large letters at a good rate. Or there is a third type of product that we sell, which is a traditional paper pattern. There aren't many traditional paper patterns in the UK right now, for long and complicated reasons that we won't go into in this video, but there will be in the near future. And when there is, we will have lots more paper patterns which look something like, stay there, something like this. So this is a sewing pattern as a customer is used to receiving it when they buy it in a shop, or when they buy it from one of the big brands. Comes in a little envelope, has pictures on the front of what you make, some instructions on the back. This one's by a great brand called Tilly and the Buttons. So this is a paper pattern. This is a print on demand pattern, and print on demand patterns are made using PDF patterns. Are you following me here? Because a few months ago, this was all new to me, but this is what we do at Sewdirect. Say there, I need an envelope. There we go, got an envelope. This is a small order, only 3 sheets. So it goes in a small envelope, pop it in like that. Put our thank you for your order slip inside. And then usually we'd scan a barcode, and this would have a Royal Mail label generated automatically using the system we built. That's not going to work today because this is a manual order that I've literally popped in to do. So I'm going to leave a post-it note on this, leave it for the guys in the morning who will generate the label and send it as soon as we can to get to the customer who needs it. But there's a quick 3-minute explainer of, broadly speaking, what products Sewdirect sells. So I realized in the past 2 videos, I've been speaking about this new business of ours without actually showing you what a sewing pattern looks like, how we prepare them, and how we post them. So that's me done over here. I'm going to go back over to the main office, go to my desk, and start working on this talk for tomorrow. I've already decided the title because it is the same title of all of the talks that I give at the B2B Expos, but crucially, it's not going to be the same content because things are changing very fast in the world of business and very fast in the world of marketing, and the messages that I was giving in these talks this time last year, with everything that has changed, just aren't as useful and aren't as relevant as they used to be. So although it's gone 7 p.m. now and I need to be back in the car at around 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'm going to go over there, make a brand new talk, broadly rehearse it, just kind of get it into my head roughly what I want to say, then go home, then get food, then do a run, then go to bed. That's the plan. I'll catch up with you once I finish the talk and let you know how it goes. Right, that was a lot easier than I expected. The time is 8:30. All of the slides are done. The structure of the talk is there. I'm really, really happy with it. Tomorrow, I'm going to film the talk, or attempt to. I don't know how busy the room's going to be and whether I'm going to have time to get it all set up, but provided I have time, I'm going to film the talk and just show you a bit of it because there are some interesting ideas in there. But also, let me put you on to an absolute life hack. Like, you're so lucky that you clicked on this video because this one thing I'm about to tell you totally changed how productive I am. Because here there are 64 slides on my screen, right? 64 slides that are kind of like cue cards. Where do my talks? As each slide is a few words, and that kind of prompts me of roughly where we're going. So I have this narrative, but what's behind me doesn't always necessarily relate to what comes out of my mouth because I'm just talking freely, right? As opposed to sitting down for 3 or 4 hours and drafting in a Google Doc what I want to write and then being like, okay, let's work out how I actually structure that to sound clever, and then how's it going to sound when it comes out of my mouth, and then how does what comes out of my mouth turn into these slides, and then how do the slides remind me of what to say and what comes out of my mouth, and what if it all goes wrong? I didn't do any of that. I did this thing that I've been doing recently, which is an absolute life hack, which is I take my phone, I open a voice note, I start recording a voice note on my phone, and I just talk freely. I present to my phone all of my ideas about something, as if I'm having a conversation with somebody who isn't actually there. So in the context of this talk, there are 5 key ideas, all brand new ideas. I took the ideas, I spoke about them in the exact way that I'm going to tomorrow, pulled on the different kind of themes and anecdotes and stories and all the stuff that's going to make up how I make these 5 points. I stopped recording. I turned that into a transcript using the voice notes app on my iPhone, like it's built in, no additional work. In about 30 seconds, that 8-minute long voice note was turned into a transcript. And then I put that transcript into Claude and I prompted it to make me the headers of the talk. There are now 64 slides. I've just ran through it once. It is a fucking banger of a talk. Like, it's going to be so good compared to the previous version of this talk. And I think this is the place where, if you're serious about getting things done, this right now is where AI is going to empower you. Because AI should not be there to think for you, right? I didn't type into Claude, I have a talk and I need 5 things, tell me what to think. There would be no point in me being in that room if an AI tool was telling me what to think and then I parrot it back to people as if it's my thoughts. We see that all the time on social media, on LinkedIn, in boardrooms. We see that shit, right? We don't want that. That's not the use of AI. AI works on a model that everybody has and therefore spits out the same rubbish that everybody spouts. But if you can use AI to speed up workflows that take your original thoughts and your original ideas and all the stuff that's in your head that makes you, and then just massively speed up the process of getting that from your mind to a deliverable format in a way that is totally true to you. And then, yes, redraft things, but use it to just speed up the whole process. It's genuinely transformative. I use voice notes into transcript into precisely written prompts inside of Claude to automate like 10 to 20% of everything I do in my life, both personally and professionally. So this SD card runs out in 1 minute and 25 seconds, so I need to wrap this up, but I just thought I'd put you on to that. Such a life hack, such an important thing for you to be doing if you feel like you want to get more done in life but don't have the time and don't want to turn into a sheep who just regurgitates rubbish that AI tells you to say. Don't do that. But you can use AI to better communicate the things that you were otherwise already going to communicate. We're down to the last minute on this SD card. Let me try and wrap this up. I'm going to drive to the apartment, get some food, plan tomorrow, and then jump in the car at around 7 or 8. I need to check Waze to see when to leave, but around 7 or 8 a.m. to drive to High Wycombe. I might speak to you in the morning. If not, you will see the talk. Either way, I'm really excited for this talk, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. See you then. Afternoon, it is 1:30. I am in High Wycombe. Where's High Wycombe, you ask? No idea, but what I do know is I am next to the McVitie's factory, and it smells of Jaffa Cakes outside, which is nice and strange. It is very hot. I've just finished my talk. Annoyingly, I didn't record it. I got talking to somebody before the talk who I know from previous events, which means that by the time it was time for me to begin speaking, couldn't set the camera up, couldn't hit record, couldn't kind of ruin my flow by stopping halfway through once I realized. So I thought, you know what? It is what it is. The people in the room were there for the talk, so let's focus on them first and foremost. I'm going to shut this door, so it's a bit loud out there. Let's focus on them first and foremost, and so that's what I did. But the talk went really well. That flow I spoke about last night of getting my ideas out into the transcript and then using that to build the outline and then editing worked amazingly well. And actually, the idea of using AI to free up your time, attention, and money is one of the themes that I spoke about in that talk. Because I spoke about this idea that if you're a business owner, or indeed if you're somebody who is career driven and trying to get something done in the next few years of life, in the short term at least, AI isn't going to put you out of business, not directly. And what I mean by that is, for most people doing most things, unless you're like a brand new graphic designer or a brand new copywriter or something like that, in which case you're probably more in trouble more immediately. But for most people right now, with your career or with your business, AI isn't going to directly put you out of business. But what might put you out of business sooner is your competitors using AI. AI won't put you out of business, but business using AI will, right? That's one of the ideas I spoke about. And given that little workflow I showed you last night, I just want to plant this idea in your head, because it's those three currencies, isn't it? It is time. We all say we don't have enough time. AI can help you win back a lot of time. There's attention. We all worry about the things in our mind, which steals us from being able to think about the important questions in business and in life. And there is money. If you had more money, you would do more with your business or career. Or if you could save money, you could be more efficient. And those three things together, when you use a tool like Claude or ChatGPT, or pick your tool to automate tasks, right? To turn transcripts of meetings into meeting notes, to proofread big documents so that you don't need to spend an hour doing it, to take transcripts of your thoughts and turn them into structured thinking, do manual lifting tasks like taking a spreadsheet and totally reformatting it, or pulling an answer out of big data that you'd otherwise need to spend hours considering, or even just giving you the outline of a thought or a project before you then put your human touch on it. Doing those things in your business. Even if you, look, there are so many people who are like, oh, I hate AI, I'm completely against it, data centers and water, and what about creatives? Like, cool, I agree. It'd be good if we weren't wasting water. It'd be good if there weren't big data centers, but unfortunately there are. AI is not going anywhere, but your business is going somewhere if you can't embrace it. Because forget about the ethos that you stand on. Forget about any sentiment you have towards AI. Embracing these tools to win more time, more attention, and more money. Money either being upside because you managed to do more, or just save money because you don't need to hire that virtual assistant, or you don't need to hire that junior employee, or you don't need to spend loads of hours on non-revenue generating tasks, because lots of that can be automated now. Those things this year, right now, are what will make all of the difference. And there's a totally different conversation about what AI will look like for white-collar workers and jobs and businesses and business owners in a few years' time. We can have that conversation another day. But right now, based on the feedback of that talk and some conversations I just had in there, based on what I told you yesterday, based on so much of what I do in life right now, that's the idea you need to keep in your head. Today, AI won't put you out of business, but a business using AI might do. I need to now drive to St Albans, which I think is about 45 minutes away. It's 1:30 and I haven't eaten yet. I never eat before talks. I may have told you this before. Whenever I have a talk, whether it's at 9 a.m. or 4 p.m, I try not to eat before then. I just feel like I perform better. Everybody says that. I know there is definitely something to being in a fasted state when you need to think and talk and just have a flow state. So I'm going to go find some food, probably work around here for a couple of hours because there's a few things I need to do today right now before the working day ends, then drive to St Albans, which is about 45 minutes away. See you later on. It's just before midnight. I am in the hotel in Shoreditch in London, and I was just about to tell you how today has been a nightmare because it's just been one minor annoyance after the other, just leading to the most frustrating day. And I was going to do that on the vlog camera, and then of course there's another minor frustration because I realized just now as I checked for the camera in my bag that when I filmed that video you saw earlier on, I took the camera, I put it on the back seat of the car, I then parked the car at a train station to train it into central London. Don't have the vlog camera, which means I don't have it tonight, I don't have it tomorrow. Today has been busy. I started the morning in Cardiff, I drove to High Wycombe, then spoke in High Wycombe. I then drove to St Albans and did food with Richard and Alex. I then drove from St Albans just down the road to Hatfield. My train was cancelled. I got on the next train. I got to St Pancras. I somehow totally cocked up the tube. My fault, don't know how I did that. Ended up in the total wrong part of London just because I followed the maps blindly and mustn't have put the right place in. Then I saw Prince Edward go past in a motorcade, random one. and then jumped in an Uber, got to the hotel, and then I've just planned the questions for the podcast tomorrow. And now I'm going to go to bed. I want to start our conversation somewhere towards the end of your story. And we will go back to the beginning, but I've just been reading your book. And you make a statement on the very first page that I find fascinating because unlike most people, you have the data to back this up. You say that categorically money does make you happy. What do you mean by that?
There's a bit of tongue-in-cheek with that. And the story I always tell is I went to the cash machine in the days before, transfers, when we had checkbooks. I'd given my sort code to the lawyers, all suddenly turned nice people when I sold Sushi the first of 3 times. And I stood in a line at the cash machine, and there on the screen was a few million quid. And I spent so long looking at it. There was a queue form behind me, and I turned to the bloke behind me and I said, "Copper, look at this, mate," I say, if anybody tells you that money doesn't make you happy, they're lying. And what I suppose, I'm not really an analyst, but I suppose if you want to know, money is fantastic. It relieves the everyday concerns about, everyday living. It comes with some problems that they're high-class problems to have, like not losing it and people seeing you in a different way and all of that sort of stuff. But no, it's always been very good for me. And I think what is interesting, though, for your listeners is that the relationship that you have with money, because you figure out what your relationship you have with, the people you love, your parents, your children, your relationship with food or whatever it is. But your relationship with money, I think people can get into trouble with. And I have a good relationship with money. I think it's fantastic stuff. It's the oil that makes the world go round.
It's interesting. I had a former Bank of England area director on the podcast a few years ago. My mind, as you said, that went to our conversation.
Yeah.
Because I was explaining to her that my business partner and I, who we were just talking about, had very different views on money. So I come from a place where we had less than no money. There were these kind of debt collector letters piling up. There was my dad looking stressed. There was no food in the fridge. There was no food in the freezer. It was a mess. And so a decade and a half later, when I'm looking at business decisions, and there are obvious business decisions where it's like pull the trigger, spend that money, buy the business as we just spoke about, I'm terrified because I think I'm gonna lose it all. So you talk early on in your story about being the poor relation, right?
Poor relations within our extended family. That's right.
Exactly. So there must have been, correct me if I'm wrong, some sort of reframing that you had to do in your relationship to money once you suddenly had more of it than you were used to.
Well, exactly, and to invent. I never thought that I was going to be. I sort of secretly hoped, I suppose, that I'd be a rich one, but I never really thought I would be.
Sure.
And so it came as a surprise, or it unfolded as a surprise. I'd always, not always, I'd been close to the edge. But it could have gone. I do know that it actually could have gone badly wrong, which it sounds like a diffy old dad.
Yeah.
And I do know it could have been. And I'm not sure that I would have been such a nice person. So in some ways, it's made me a better person rather than a not so good person. But anybody listening, I can tell you, it's there's a lot of work to start a business, as you know. And, you get lucky and you have tip over points. And that's what we were talking about before we came on air, as the tip over point when you bought into that sewing business and got a very good deal. So there are tip over points, but to get to them, it always takes longer than you think. And, the harder you work, the more that you sweat, the luckier you get.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to go back to those earlier days that you just touched upon, because the story is well documented in the book, and I want to speak about some of it. But in those days when you're moving around the country, where you're at boarding school, where you're perhaps getting into a bit of trouble, who was that version of Simon? What did that version of Simon think he would be doing 20 or 30 years later?
I don't think he had any idea at all. I think he was, rebel without a clue, really. I think early on, they say your character's formed in the first 5, 6, 7 years of your life. But I think very early on, I thought I would, join the kind of the rebel cause, probably as a reaction against Brigadier Woodroffe, my dad, who's sort of, I mean, love my dad and forgive everything, but he is the sort of villain of the piece in my childhood. My mum's the hero, if you like, to some extent. But, I think that that's where that kind of rebel feeling came from, and that's where not working hard at school and failing all the exams and all that, I think that all came from that point. And I think that eventually I remember having a sort of sense as I got into my 20s of, and I got into trouble of all different sorts, of I don't know how the world worked. And I went through that process of trying to figure out how the world worked. It was actually, it's vulnerability with dignity, I think, is always attractive, but you've got to have dignity to it. But there was the beginning of a sort of, personal development on the bookshelves and that. And, I did, and I saw a therapist, and went through that whole process. And I sort of started to learn how the world works, and how, but, to take down the protective bricks that were around me. And I think that was what effectively, eventually got me to be the person that, a mix of that, of some self-awareness, together with an absolute sort of drive to not be the poor relations and to want to have something for myself, to have no, especially with no qualifications to fall back on, because I left school when I was 16. I think that was a drive. So really, I say thank you very much to my father now, and I can tell anybody at home, listening, that if you're a bit chippy or you've got difficult parents or it's a bit difficult at home, it's not such a bad place to be, because it gives you a bit of grit in that oyster that makes you want to get up and go. I met a lot of people who had a born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or maybe it wasn't very good quality silver, but it was something like that, and they sort of don't do so much. Or there's one of my friends I was at school with who called me and said, "Oh, it's amazing what you've done, and I don't know how you got that." He said, it wasn't so difficult for me or my growing up, but he said, "I'm dull as ditch water," and I thought, well, I'm glad I'm not dull as ditch water.
Do you ever sense, though, that kind of relative lack of abundance, because everything's relative, right? Do you
Yeah.
ever think that actually is a benefit? Because I'm the same. We were just speaking. I
Yes.
Corby. I went to a school called Brook Weston, and forget the poor relation. I was the poor person in the
Yeah,
school.
yeah,
It's
that's
amazing.
yeah.
And there were lots of people with very wealthy parents who would go on holiday 6 times a year. And back then, very jealous of them, right? They had the nice watch and the iPhone when it came out and all this. Now, I actually feel as though that upbringing was an advantage, because I had something that I needed to build for myself. And maybe this is just my coping mechanism, but I can't imagine anything worse than being born into a position where you feel like you have nothing to prove. You have no runway to go. So do you feel like that kind of helped you?
I don't know, and I think that is what I'm talking about, exactly that. I think the thing that I always imagined when I met other people's parents, I went to the house, and maybe I just saw it through rose-tinted glasses, but, I remember sort of sitting around somebody's kitchen table, and the sort of really gentle father and mother, and, really good family discussions over dinner about everything. And that was the bit I thought, oh, I wish we could do that at home. I wish we could have those nice, easy conversations instead of rather stilted things. My father going, "I know you don't think that." That's what I wanted. But I know people who had difficult childhoods and who go on to be very happy in life and successful or whatever. And there are people who've had the same childhoods who don't. So actually, it's the decisions you make along the way as a young individual that make the difference, not what you grow up with. Yeah, I think, all you can do as parents when you get to that stage is just do the best you can and make sure you look after yourself and your own career and your own life, because it's a good example to your kids. Just do everything for your kids. And, I'll get really slaughtered for saying it, but over loving or over protecting your kids is absolutely the wrong thing to do. I read a book once called The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, which is about what happens to the child's beginning of their mental cognizance or whatever that word is, cognizance in when they're in the womb. And this person who's writing it was sort of saying, actually, to have the perfect pregnancy and not have any stress for the woman and all of that stuff isn't the best for a child. Children need to learn the difficulties of life, and they need to come up against things. And it's the same when children grow up. They need to come up against things, even if it's difficulty with their parents or difficulty at school. They're good things because they learn coping mechanisms themselves, as you said.
Honestly, every week I'm like, oh, next week I'll film more, it'll be easier, I'll have more time. I'm sorry, I haven't really filmed this week again, but let me try and summarize where I've been for the past few days since we last spoke, and then tell you a little bit about what I'm thinking about today at the end of this week and what next week is going to look like. So the last time we caught up was Thursday night in the hotel in London, and I told you that this camera was in the back of the car, which means I couldn't film anything out and about on Friday, and that's exactly what happened. But I woke up on Friday having had a fairly decent sleep in the hotel, probably got like 6 hours sleep, which I'll take, and then headed straight over to the Acast studios where I met Simon Woodroffe, who is the founder of Yo Sushi and the founder of Yotel, and spoke to him on the podcast for just over an hour about his new book, Yo Man, and his life and some of the lessons that he has taken from building 2 enormous businesses and selling those businesses and now going out into the world and in many ways doing side quests, things like thinking about education, about prison reform and so on. Really, really interesting episode. Simon seems like a great guy. It's rare, although it's been a few years since I've done guest episodes properly, it's rare that you meet somebody and immediately feel so comfortable, immediately feel like you know them. And I appreciate that every time I speak to a podcast guest, there is a parasocial relationship because I've been listening to their content or reading their book or diving into their work in the past to prepare for the conversation. But from the second Simon turned up to the studio, through the entire conversation, the chat afterwards, him leaving, he just seems like a nice guy. And it's a really interesting conversation, one that may actually be out by time this video is out because I'm intentionally running these vlogs a few weeks behind. So if it is out, it will be in the description of this video. I encourage you to listen to it just because there's a lot in there from a man in his 70s who has lived many lives, who has grown many businesses, and who has lots to share. So that was my conversation on Friday with Simon. Then went across from Old Street to St Pancras, where I went into the Standard Hotel, got some food, grabbed a drink, and then just worked for a few hours because I had a lot of work that I needed to get done on Friday. But of course, also needed to drive back to Cardiff. So before I started the drive, I just locked myself down in that hotel and worked until everything was done. Then went out with a friend on Friday night, got back to the apartment at midnight and ended up working until 4 a.m. working on a new brand launch on Sewdirect. There is a lot of work that is involved in preparing a new brand to go live on the website, and the brand that launched this weekend is a big brand in the sewing space. Then yesterday, Saturday, I was just out all day having a jolly with friends, doing no work. I always aim to do 2 things on the weekend. Saturdays, I really try and protect to do nothing. I don't check my emails, really. I certainly don't touch my laptop. I just try and switch off for a day. And then Sundays, which actually brings us nicely into what I'm doing today on Sunday, they're not really working days as such, but Sundays are days that I protect for thinking and problem solving and life admin and resetting everything like I spoke about last week. And so for me today, that's been popping into Cardiff to buy some bits that I needed and some vinyls that I didn't because I popped into HMB. It's been doing 10 or 20 like random little tasks that this week I just didn't have time to do, getting ahead on some emails for tomorrow, checking in on the Sewdirect stuff because we had a email campaign got this morning to launch that new brand that I spoke about from Friday night. And then most of this afternoon I've been thinking about my goals for the second half of the year. So as I film this right now, we're at the very end of June, and so from Tuesday onwards, I think it is the second half of the year. And like everybody, like you, I'm sure, I had lots of goals for this year, and some of them I've achieved already. Some of them are still in play, but some of them are no longer relevant. And on top of that, there are new things that in the past 6 months have come into my life that mean that the goals I have for the second half of this year are just different to the goals that I had at the beginning of the year. The person I am at the midpoint of the year is slightly different to the person I was at the beginning of the year. And so I have done this for years now. In addition to planning my year in the way I do at the beginning of every year, a tradition that I've had for about 7 or 8 years, I also, at the midpoint of the year, just stop for a couple of hours, think about what it is that I really want to squeeze out of the rest of this year, because at the midpoint of the year, every year, I find myself surprised at how quickly half a year goes. So fresh in my mind is how quickly the first half of this year has gone, and so there is an onus on me to get stuff done in the second half, as I sat there today and planned what I needed this second half of the year to look like. And I'm confident in the goals I've set. I don't think any of them are totally unrealistic, but they are all grounded in one of 4 or 5 camps of things I want to be continually moving forward on in life. And so having that sense of clarity as to where I want to go for the rest of the year and what I want to get done in all those different areas of life feels like a nice place to be. And so my task now is to go and get the car cleaned, phone my mum, go back to the apartment, and then honestly, for the first time this week, I'm just going to sit and watch TV and do nothing. This has been a really busy week. I've been all over the place. There's been lots of business stuff. There's been lots of headaches and challenges. There has been lots going on in the way of travel. So I'm just going to do nothing. Maybe get a bath, then put the TV on, and between like 9 and 12, just chill. That's my plan. And then next week begins with a big meeting with an important contact for the sewing business over in Oxford, I believe, which means tomorrow morning I'm up early, back in the car to travel to Oxford. So this might be the last update for this week. And if it is, I apologize, because just like I said last week, where I was like, I'm sorry, it's been a short video, next week will be better. This has also ended up, I think, being a short video. But as is my goal with all of these videos, I'm not trying to show you what's on that side of the camera, right? I'm not trying to flip the camera around too much and like show you every single little thing I do in life, because frankly, I don't have the time or the attention right now to do that. But what you get in these videos is kind of those brief moments in between all of the action, where I get to just sit with you and tell you what has happened, what is happening, what's going to happen, and how I feel about that. And so we're on the 3rd of these videos now. If you haven't already, by the way, please do subscribe to this brand new channel, because I'm sure there are very few subscribers here by the time you watch this. But I hope that if you watch these videos on a Sunday, you get something out of them. I don't know what, but I like videos like this where people just stop and think out loud, and so hopefully you do as well. In any event, thank you for watching this week's episode. Next week's another busy one. Do my best, as always, to film as much of it as I can. But in the meantime, have a good evening. Have a good week. I'll see you next week.